Fans, welcome to another edition of Nerd Words. Today we're going to talk about the influx of new comic book and superhero related shows on television.
Well, we've hit on some before with the current ones in S.H.I.E.L.D. and Arrow, but DC is expanding its universe pretty big fashion by coming out with Gotham and also coming out with The Flash. One thing I'm curious about, they are coming out with Constantine as well. And these are on different networks, so it's going to be tough to get the interplay with them. I'm not sure how much Constantine may be set in the DC universe or not, because Constantine interacts with, the Vertigo universe and the DC universe.
And it's a big part of the new 52's Justice League Dark.
Yeah, so we'll see how much Constantine may tie in with all that, but Flash is going to tie in with the Green Arrow for sure. It's essentially spinning off out of the Green Arrow. Not a big idea yet on whether Gotham at some point will tie in with the shows. Obviously, Gotham is set in the past before the heroic rise in the DC universe. It's going to be Bruce Wayne as a 12-year-old child in the show. It's going to follow quite a bit along of, Detective Gordon, Lieutenant Gordon, his career before he becomes the police commissioner. Will you get Easter eggs that reference the other shows? Just going to have to wait and see. Is it going to tie in with the movie in any way at all? Or are Flash and Green Arrow going to tie in with the movie? Another wait and see. That's not been announced yet.
Of course, on the Marvel front too, they're going to have Agent Carter, which is a spin-off of, Marvel has the one-shots, the short films, as part of their various DVDs and the Blu-rays and the bonus feature. And Agent Carter is, of course, based on Agent Carter from the first Captain America movie, and it's going to be set in the very foundation of S.H.I.E.L.D.
This is not Sharon Carter.
This is Peggy Carter.
This is Peggy Carter. It's going to be set in 1946, just after World War II. Obviously, we're not going to see Captain America in it unless it's some kind of flashback, because Captain America is dead at this point. And if you saw Captain America 10, I hope you have. I'm going to give a small spoiler about it. The old woman in the coma, or not in the old woman with dementia that Captain America goes to see in the hospital, that's Peggy Carter.
Now, what you do have a chance to go with Agent Carter, you could bring out costumed hero-wise, but he wasn't in costume in the movie, is Union Jack.
Oh, there's several heroes. The original Human Torch, the robot Human Torch was around at that time. Of course, Namor was around at that time. I don't know whether Marvel's going to go that big into their TV thing. They seem to not want to, or they seem to be somewhat reluctant to do that, unless the ratings start sagging, and they'll bring an Asgardian on or whatever they need to do. But that works for some people. They do directly tie in with each other, though. I'm sure it's all under the Disney Marvel umbrella. They're coming out with the Daredevil show, and I believe, is it Ghost Rider?
You got Daredevil, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, and Jessica Jones. They're all going to get a season on Netflix. And of course, that'll be all the episodes will be released at the same time.
Those will fall all under the umbrella of the Marvel Universe, directly related, from what we can understand, with the cinematic versions of the characters. Streamlining, introducing people on every format to affect their entire universe. So we're not clear if DC is going to do it that way. Actually, from what I've been reading, DC's probably not going to do it that way.
In fact, some of their other films may not tie in with their other films.
So their house is not quite in order. They have announced a fairly large number of films coming out over the next few years in their universe that's going to begin being built. We know for sure with the Batman, Superman, then into the Justice League. And I think it said today, I want to say they had 9 more films coming out over the next 7, 8 years. Marvel has its projects planned out for the next 14 years. They have plans through 2028 building this universe and expanding their universe, the Marvel D.C. Marvel Disney section of that.
Right, and of course, in the meanwhile, you got the properties they can't use, but they have all the other little properties. They have Punisher back. They have Daredevil back. They have Ghost Rider back.
Well, here's the big thing right now, and you'll know this guess if you watch really good shows that are on right now, The Walking Dead, of course, Hannibal, Dexter that just went off, had a good run, American Horror Story, Bates Motel, horror shows, horror themed shows, killing, whatever. Those type of shows are doing big business right now. As Walking Dead is the most popular show on TV. Well, Marvel, with a potential Doctor Strange movie, if that's going to be a movie, it probably is since they mentioned it, but it could be a TV show, I'm not sure. But you have Ghost Rider, and I'm not sure if they bought the
They got Blade back.
So if they got Blade back, they could do their version of Dracula, their version of the entire Midnight Suns thing, and I could see them playing that out on TV and potentially even turning it into a movie as well. But like I said, horror's hot right now on TV, and it makes for big things. And you could really vastly improve your Ghost Rider product by
Not having Nicolas Cage in it.
Not having Nicolas Cage, playing more to the horror side of it.
Because Mephisto fell under the Ghost Rider movie thing. And he's the devil, basically, in Marvel.
Yeah, he is Marvel's version of the devil. And of course, he bought the soul of Johnny Blaze in the original Ghost Rider mythos. I really think they could do a lot with that, though, and make. I think they could build a horror universe. They could. I would like to see them do a show about Hannibal King, who is, of course, a vampire hunter, and he debuted in Tomb of Dracula and Marvel's version of Dracula, and he chased Dracula around trying to kill him. And as we said, they had the Midnight Suns and Hannibal and the Night Stalkers were hunting down all the horrors of the Marvel universe. I personally, we just talked about this the other day. I like DC's horror universe better. And if you've not watched, it's somewhere on the page. I'm sure the Nerd Words page here that Chris has posted it somewhere in the group. The trailer for Constantine. It looks amazing.
Oh, it's movie quality.
And DC has a good horror universe. They went in big a long time ago, and that's one thing I'll give them a lot of credit for. In the early '70s, after of course you had the '50s horror tales and titles that got all taken out by the Comics Code Authority. They weren't allowed to do horror really anymore. So DC, they had the House of Mystery and the House of Secrets. They put science fiction in them. And once Stan Lee broke down the code and released Amazing Spider-Man with no comics code, it lost all its teeth. There was no comics code pressure anymore. The 50s were over, the era of, everything. My gosh, look at Wonder Woman, she's corrupting our children. Very wholesome characters anyway, supposedly corrupting you through evils. That was over. The late 60s saw the big rise, and Midnight Cowboy peaked out around that time, won an Oscar with an X rating. And things become suddenly more adult themed, things became more acceptable in comics. So DC went back to horror. They introduced Kane, who was the keeper of the House of Secrets, the House of Mystery, and then his brother Abel, of course from the Bible, who's the keeper of the House of Mystery. And if you ever read Neil Gaiman's comics, you know that Kane repeatedly kills Abel over and over again for spilling secrets and any other thing that he deems stupid. But that's part of a really deep and rich DC horror universe that I think Constantine can draw from. And Marvel's horror universe, even though it had some horror too, it was more still
It was still very super heroic.
I mean, the Werewolf by Night, the Werewolf by Night came out, Dracula came out. Dracula was more of a straight up horror film or horror story.
But they dropped him into a lot of the hero titles too.
And you had Dracula, you had the Frankenstein's monster from Marvel in the early. Marvel used the classic characters.
The universal characters.
They were in the public domain already because obviously their authors were long dead. And Marvel built universe. They had the Mummy, Dracula. They could still do something good with that. And I thought the Blade movies worked out pretty well, especially the first two of them. I think Marvel could make a strong horror universe. I'll say I like DC's better, and Constantine does look better.
And speaking of comic book related TV properties, we almost didn't touch on this one. And it's DC, though it's Vertigo and has nothing to do with their regular universe. AMC's making Preacher.
Yeah, Preacher, great comic series. I'll be interested to see how far AMC's willing to go with it.
Because there's a lot of stuff in Preacher that
it's
wouldn't normally make it on TV.
If you've ever read any of them before, you'll know, or just pretty much any comic by Garth Ennis, you'll know. And Garth is a great writer, but Garth, To me, Garth is in the mold, he's basically Quentin Tarantino of comics. His comics are going to have excellent dialogue, but he's not going to pull any punches. 4-letter words are going to
Nudity.
throughout, nudity, extreme graphic violence. And that's who Garth Ennis always reminded me of. And if you've ever read any of his stuff, you probably agree with it. It's very well written, high quality stuff. But he pulls no punches. He's good with, things like Preacher or horror related comics. When they rebooted Valiant and they claim bought them, he took over doing Shadow Man. And he actually made Shadow Man, it was a voodoo universe and some other things like that, and magic. And he did a really good job of Shadow Man while he was writing. And of course, Preacher's a legendary run. And he did several other comics for DC and Marvel. He started doing the Punisher for Marvel. His Punisher was really graphically violent.
His Punisher was actually, his first 6 issues of Punisher were kind of the basis of the Tom Jane movie, just a little toned down.
But he did a really good job, does a really good job with everything. We'll see what they can throw out there with Preacher. And I can imagine some religious groups may protest. If you know the concept of Preacher, you'll know what I mean. He speaks with the voice of God, basically.
Right, and it should be good stuff. Fans, we are out of time. We'll see you next time on Nerd World.